I had no idea if the Xiaomi Pad 7 Pro could keep up with the M4 iPad Pro. Does the iPad Pro have a much more powerful chip? Yes. Does it have a better display? Yes, in almost every category. They look very similar, but they have different operating systems. And would a better comparison actually be with the iPad Air? Let's find out. So both tablets are about the same size, and the iPad Pro is thinner by about 1 millimeter. It's definitely something that you notice if you hold both of them at the same time, but it's not really going to be a deal breaker for most users. We're getting an 11-inch display on the iPad Pro versus 11.2 inches on the Pad 7 Pro, and the Pad 7 Pro is also heavier by about 0.07 pounds or 56 grams. Now, as far as portability, these differences aren't super meaningful, but as we start taking a look at the design and the quality of the displays, we're going to see some more separation. From a design standpoint, these tablets appear quite similar, with similarly sized bezels all the way around, rounded corners, and flat edges, and both have aluminum sides and backs. Now, both devices have square camera modules on the back, which we'll talk about later on, but one thing you'll notice is that the Xiaomi cameras module is bigger and thicker, so while neither lays perfectly flat, the Pad 7 Pro wobbles more as you tap on it. And of course, this goes away if you're using a case. Now, looking around the edges, both tablets have power buttons at the top, volume controls on the right, and USB-C ports for charging and connecting accessories. The iPad Pro has a more powerful Thunderbolt/USB 4 port versus USB 3.2 Gen 1 on the Pad 7 Pro. However, for wireless communication, the Pad 7 Pro supports Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4 versus Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3 on the iPad Pro. Now finally, we see 4 speaker grills in both cases, 2 on each side, and the ones on the iPad Pro are bigger, but both tablets have 4 speakers. For biometric authentication, the iPad Pro has Face ID with a front-facing camera, and the Pad 7 Pro has a fingerprint sensor integrated into the power button and the option for face unlock. Now, of the 2 facial recognition options, the iPad Pro is more secure, but Xiaomi gives you more options, so you'll need to choose what's more important to you. Now it's time to talk about the displays, and we're going to see some important differences. So first of all, the iPad Pro has a less reflective display, and that's going to be important if you're working outside or in areas where you have to deal with bright lights. The iPad Pro has an 11-inch 120Hz tandem OLED display with a resolution of 2420 by 1668, an aspect ratio of 3:2. It's a P3 display, which is a wider color gamut. We're getting 264 pixels per inch, 1000 nits peak brightness for SDR content, and 1600 nits for HDR content. The Pad 7 Pro has an 11.2-inch 144Hz IPS LCD display with a higher resolution, a similar aspect ratio, lower SDR and HDR brightness, but a higher pixel per inch count. Now, both devices support HDR10, and Netflix will serve HDR content to both. Now, the first difference we notice is the faster refresh rate of 144 Hz on the Pad 7 Pro. Now, this means that things like opening and closing apps, navigating around the home screen and settings, and scrolling within apps and web pages, those types of things are going to look slightly smoother. Now, on the iPad Pro, we're still getting 120 Hz, so it's not like it's going to be a super noticeable difference, but it is something I wanted to mention. Now, aspect ratio is essentially the same, so you're getting a similar experience when you're watching content or when you're using these tablets in portrait mode. Now, overall, both look great, and I'd give the iPad Pro the edge in terms of image quality, color accuracy, and brightness, and having a less reflective display. And if you're looking for the highest resolution or the slightly faster refresh rate, that's the Pad 7 Pro. Now back to the speakers. So both have 4 speakers and support Dolby Atmos. They both get plenty loud for a tablet, and in my experience, the iPad Pro sounded fuller and had more presence. Here's a sample. Now, neither tablet has a 3.5mm headphone jack, so if you want to use wired headphones or a headset for gaming, you'll need to get one that works with USB-C or use an adapter. Now, moving on to the camera system, we're getting a 12-megapixel front-facing camera on the iPad Pro versus a 32-megapixel camera on the Pad 7 Pro, and here's a quick sample. Here's a camera and microphone comparison of the Xiaomi Pad 7 Pro and the 11-inch M4 iPad Pro. This should give you a pretty good idea of the type of image quality that you're going to get. and the type of audio quality that you should expect from each tablet. Now, when we look at the rear-facing cameras, the iPad Pro has a 12 megapixel camera versus a 50 megapixel one on the Pad 7 Pro. And while I don't use my tablets to take photos, the Pad 7 Pro definitely came out ahead. And keep in mind that if you're looking for a LiDAR scanner, that's only available on the iPad Pro. Now it's time to talk about accessories, starting with the Stylus, which in both cases has to be purchased separately. The iPad Pro is compatible with the Apple Pencil Pro and the USB-C Apple Pencil, while the Pad 7 Pro works with the Xiaomi Focus Pen. Now both have about the same diameter, a flat edge, they have a matte finish so they're comfortable to hold, and the feel of the tip of the Stylus hitting the glass is very similar with both. If you've had a chance to use something like the Samsung S Pen, in both cases here, the tip of the Stylus feels a little more firm and it makes a little bit of a louder sound when it contacts the glass. Now, both stylus options offer a ton of functionality with either physical buttons on the Focus Pen or tap, squeeze, and rotate on the Apple Pencil Pro. Now, I'm not an artist, so I'm not going to speak about them from that perspective, but for general use, like taking notes, marking up documents, and for light sketching, both have worked really well for me. Now, my one gripe about the Focus Pen is that the buttons are a little high, so I have to adjust my grip every time I want to use them. Both stylus options magnetically attach and charge on the side of the device. They do require a charge in order to work, and both pair wirelessly. Now, the displays on these two tablets are fully laminated, meaning that the display itself, the touch layer, and the cover glass are fused together. And this means that the image appears as if it's right on top of the glass, and the tip of the stylus actually looks like it's touching the content that's being created. Now, as far as keyboards, the Pad 7 Pro is compatible with the Xiaomi Pad 7 Focus keyboard, while the iPad uses the smaller Magic keyboard for iPad Pro. Now, both actually do a really good job. They're comfortable to type on, the trackpads are responsive, and they have a full row of function keys. I like the keys on the Magic keyboard a little bit better. They feel a bit more responsive, but it's a slight edge. Now, the Magic keyboard also has USB-C pass-through for charging, which leaves the port on the iPad open to accessories, and that's a nice feature to have. Now, moving on to processing power, the iPad Pro comes with the M4 chip and 8 gigabytes of RAM on the smaller storage models, or 16 gigabytes on the 1 and 2 terabyte models. The Pad 7 Pro comes with the Snapdragon 8S Gen 3 chip, and the 128 and 256 gigabyte models come with 8 gigs of RAM, and the 512 gigabyte model comes with 12. I'm going to quickly show Geekbench scores for those of you who are interested, and then move on to real life use. Now, the iPad Pro comes out ahead for both single and multi-core performance, and it also scores higher for GPU performance. So as far as benchmarks go, it's not particularly close. Now, practically speaking though, both are super fast and responsive. So general navigation was fast, productivity and social media apps were snappy, and I played the games that I typically play on high settings and had no issues. Having said that, I'm still going to give the edge to the iPad Pro because it has a ton of additional headroom in terms of performance, so I would expect it to continue to perform better for longer. Also, if you plan on doing things like playing AAA games or editing super challenging video footage, again, you're going to want to have as much processing power as possible. Now, another area you may want to consider is multitasking. So both tablets have options for split view and additional pop-up windows or slide over windows, so you should be able to work with more than just one app at a time. Now, just to reiterate, even with multiple apps running at the same time, both tablets continue to be fast and responsive. Now, looking at battery life, the Pad 7 Pro has a larger 8850 mAh battery versus 8160 on the iPad Pro, and it also comes out slightly ahead in real life. But let me know if you want to see a dedicated battery comparison. Now, for what I do during a typical day, the Pad 7 Pro has lasted about 1 to 2 hours longer, and of course this completely depends on what you plan on doing. Now, another advantage of the Pad 7 Pro is that it supports 67-watt hypercharge for faster charging. When we look at gaming, both tablets did quite well. So for basic games, you're not really going to have an issue with either one. What I was really curious about was how these two tablets compare for more demanding games like PUBG and Genshin Impact, as well as with the Xbox Game Pass games. Now, Genshin Impact ran smoothly on both tablets, and it was extremely rare that I experienced any lag. I will say that if I have to choose between these two, it ran better on the iPad Pro. Playing PUBG, I was able to go up to Extreme Plus, which is 90 FPS on the Pad 7 Pro, and then all the way up to Ultra Extreme, which is 120 FPS on the iPad Pro. And even when both were set to 90 frames per second, the iPad felt smoother. So personally, for more demanding games, I would still take the iPad Pro, even though they're playable on both, and for less demanding games, games, it's not really going to make a meaningful difference. When I paired my Xbox controller with both tablets, I absolutely crushed any cloud-based Xbox Game Pass game that I tried to play. Now, pricing is going to vary depending on where you are in the world, but the iPad Pro is going to be more expensive. So the Xiaomi Pad 7 Pro has a nice 144Hz display, a powerful quad speaker system, plenty of processing power for most users. It's compatible with the Focus Pen and keyboard. It does a good job at multitasking, has more biometric authentication options, works great for most gaming, it supports Wi-Fi 7, and it has good battery life. The M4 11-inch iPad Pro has a higher quality display, a more refined app ecosystem, uses a more secure facial recognition option, it's extremely smooth and responsive with single apps and when multitasking. We're getting compatibility with the Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil Pro or the USB-C version, and Apple is known for excellent long-term support for their devices, so you'll probably have at least 6 to 7 years of OS updates, plus it's still going to be fast. Now you should check out this comparison. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.